you're fine, sweetheart. You're fine. Your eyes are beautiful. Your hair is lovely. But you know, the whole keeping me here against my will, that's kind of bad. Don't do that. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am Espoir Duvit, and today I'm going to play a game called Flowers of Evil. A yandere dating sim with a boy who smells like dirt. Hey, I like flowers. I like evil. I like boys that smell like dirt. Warning, this is a horror game not intended for players under the age of 18. Gameplay will include stalking, yandere themes, violence, body horror, kidnapping, imprisonment, gosh darn it. Trying to read those fast. What's your name, stranger? I am Espoir. It means hope in French. How beauteous the sun as it rises supreme, like an explosion that greets us from above. Oh, happy is he that can hail with love. Its decline more glorious far than a dream. I saw flower, furrow, and brook, I recall, how they swooned like a tremulous heart 'neath the sun. Let us haste to the skyline, 'tis late, let us run, at least to catch one slanting ray, ere it fall. I don't know what that is, but it's nice. You're late. Wake up. Okay. The shrill blaring of your phone alarm jars you out of sleep. Eyes squinted in the unwelcome morning sunlight. You're nested deep in the layered swath of blankets, nose chilled where it peeked out of the covers. Winter brought with it a brutal cold this year, and you wanted nothing more than to roll over and go back to sleep. Why did you think signing up for a morning class was a good idea again? Ugh, never. Sighing, you roll out of bed. You're racked with shivers as your feet hit the frigid paneled flooring, and you wrap a blanket around yourself stubbornly as you make your way to the kitchen. You don't have a lot of time to get ready before class, but there's no way you're making it out of the house without a warm drink. Oh, lovely. Your cheap student housing apartment wasn't much, but you tried to keep it clean and comfortable. It felt almost cheerful sometimes on mornings like this, going through the motions of turning the kettle on and setting the French press to brew. Though there was every possibility that the daunting prospect of going out on such a chilly winter morning in no small part made your tiny kitchen feel cozier by comparison. You sleepily gather your things and make yourself somewhat presentable as the grounds bloom and begin to darken, the smell of fresh coffee already helping you feel more awake and alive. Unable to dawdle any longer and armed with a to-go mug and your warmest sweater, you step out of your little apartment and begin to head out into the emerging dawn. Luckily, you lived a fairly short walk from campus, and there was a tidy walking path skirting the bleeding edge of the local forests that cut a few minutes of time off of wandering through the linear edges of suburbia. Most mornings you enjoyed watching the sunrise start to peek out from between the trees in earnest, bathing everything in the kind of fiery glow that was just harder to appreciate when it was glaring off the windows of passing cars. It almost made getting up this early worth it, a feeling of untouched peace and solitude before the clamor of daily life had the chance to set in. Almost. Lately, though, you hadn't felt as comfortable here. Something unsettled you in the usually familiar arms of the trees as they waved around you. It felt less like a greeting, and more like the clawed and desperate reach of silent towering monsters watching your every move. Maybe it was just the building stress of schoolwork, or the result of one too many fitful nights' sleep, but the sharp awareness of eyes on you set shivers down your spine nonetheless. Your breath quickens as you pick up the pace. You didn't want to spend any longer out here than absolutely necessary this morning. Maybe it was a little silly, but honestly, this route was just starting to give you the creeps. Your chest is pounding by the time you make it to campus, flush with anxiety and the knowledge that you're definitely running at least a few minutes late. This early, the hallways always felt so scant and abandoned. Most students had better sense than to sign up for classes that started before the sun had risen properly. Besides the shuffling, wearied presence of your first period biology classmates, this wing of the school was usually devoid of any signs of life. Just the rustle of paper as you pass by loosely stapled notices and the acrid scent of cleaning products from janitorial services the night before. You burst into your classroom with a pant, an apology already taking shape in your mouth before you have the chance to register that no one was there. What the fluff? You glance around, nervously, punching the passcode into your phone and pulling up your school email. Maybe there was a closure today. Nothing besides the usual automated reminders of assignment deadlines and school events. Taking a step back, you shake your head a little to clear it. There was no way you'd gotten the day wrong. What was going on? Out of the corner of your eye, you caught a glance of a sheet of lined paper taped hurriedly to the half-open classroom door. Guess you missed this in your hurry to make it in. In your professor's clumsy, near illegible script, the note read that due to a personal emergency, your class was cancelled. There were no follow-up details, no instructions on what readings to do or assignments to finish. No notice of when she might be back. Weird. Usually teachers emailed stuff like this, and it wasn't so late that you wouldn't expect to see a few of your other classmates still milling around. You peered down into your to-go mug, taking a pull from your coffee as you sifted through your options. It seems like a waste to come all the way here for a cancelled class period, only to go back home and wait a few hours for the next one. Maybe it'd be best to just stick around campus for a while. The library would probably be a good bet, warm and quiet, plenty of outlets in case you ended up doom-scrolling into your next class instead of studying and your phone's battery suffered the consequences. Heck, maybe you'd even pick up a book you enjoyed. It's been a long time since you've read anything just for fun. The library is similarly empty. It's quiet here, but it's well lit and cozy, and the smell of dusty pages seems to wrap you in a sense of calm you've been sorely missing since you woke up this morning. It seems you've made your little hideout near the poetry section. You knock back the rest of your coffee before idly making your way over to the nearest shelf, plucking out a book at random and flipping to the nearest page. The heart of trees are serially displaced, pressed annually, outward to a ring. Okay, they aren't really what we mean by hearts. They are so acquiesque. They aren't really what we mean by hearts. They so easily acquiesce, willing to thin and stretch around some. Upstart green. What? I understood none of that. I'm usually good at deciphering poetry, but I understood none of that, except maybe trees are kind of scary. Also, hello. That's a good one. A smooth voice tears you out of your reading, and you slam the cover closed with a start. Cute. Does he have little leaves in his hair? Aw. Whoa, calm down. It's all right. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to scare you. Who the heck is this guy? You could have sworn you were the only person in here, and you definitely didn't hear anyone walking up. It is, though. A good one, I mean. Excuse me? The poem. The one that you were reading there, K. Ryan. A real heart does not give away to spring. A heart is true. I say no more springs without you. Smooth. Very smooth. Well, that was corny. Nah, that's pretty smooth. That would win me over. Seeming to notice your blank stare, the stranger laughs a little awkwardly. I'm Wither, by the way. Wither, aw. What a strange name. You force a smile, shaking off your nerves. Nice to meet you. So, you like poetry then? His smile grows wide, and he leans in a little closer. He smells odd, like wet dirt, rich and deep, and somewhat sickly, decompositional. Oh dear. That's some good healthy dirt, then. I love poetry. The art of choosing each word so deliberately, and taking the bare, flawed composition of speech and elevating it to an elegant and succinct expression. It necessitates incredible strength, conviction, precision. Yeah, writing poetry is fun, and hard, but it's fun. Laying the soul bare just to flay it apart on the page? I find it very moving. Perhaps one of the more admirable aspirations of the human being. Wow, are you a poetry major? Something like that. You could say I'm well-versed. Would you like to hear one? Absolutely, fam. Taken back by the offer, and more than a little curious, you nod. You can just recite one, right off the cuff? Sure I can, especially for such a pretty thing like you. Oh, you. You feel your face heating up at the praise, and gesture for him to continue. Two well-assorted travelers use the highway, Eros, and the muse. From the twins is nothing hidden, to the pair is naught forbidden. Hand in hand the comrades go, every nook of nature throw. Each for other they were born, each can other best adorn. Though they know only one mortal grief, past all balsam or relief, when by false companions cross, the pilgrims have each other lost. If you were pink before, you're sure you've gone beet red by the end of his recitation, and it takes your sluggish brain a moment to catch up to your tongue as you fumble for a response. He's grinning, he knows what he did. He just said something real smooth. Reading poetry, I feel like I'm gonna summon something sometimes. That's beautiful. Who wrote it? Emerson. It's called Love and Thought. I'm glad you liked it. I was hoping you'd be interested. I know a lot of poetry, and this section is usually so empty. When I saw that you were reading, I had to introduce myself. Well, I'm glad you did. You feel flustered, slow in the draw. This guy was unusually smooth, and you sat awkwardly in the place between being charmed and having no idea how to react. Thanks for sharing that with me. Wither smiled, his cheeks taking on a strange, almost sickly green tone. Maybe he was more nervous than he came across. Certainly. You're such a delight. Without a doubt the most gorgeous creature I've ever seen. Like some rare flower, all vibrant and alive on the first breath of spring. I'm guessing he likes plants. I don't know how vibrant I feel, but I am looking forward to spring. It's been so cold lately. Sunshine is on its way. Don't fret, Buttercup. Buttercup. Noticing your confused expression, Wither leans back against the bookshelf, looking contemplative. Not so much a fan of that endearment? How about Daisy, Sweet Pea, Yarrow, Magnolia? Amaryllis? It's hard to pinpoint what sort of specimen you might be. You've all their charms in spades. Stop being so smooth, sir. No, whatever you like is fine, but really, you can just call me Espoir. Espoir? A lovelier sound than all the blossoms in the world. What a flirt. You blushed darkly, looking down at your shoes. Stop, sir. Trying to take a hold of this situation a little more firmly, you clear your throat and sift through mundane conversation starters. So, what are you doing in the library this early? It's so empty around campus at this time. School was a safe landing topic, you assumed, if a dull one. Well, I needed to do something today. The thought of standing by and just waiting for more time to pass was agonizing. So, here I am. Oh, I hear you. I also suffer from the agonies. You're half joking in the existential, depressive stylings of most of your college peers these days, but something in your words seemed to spark a light in Wither's wide green eyes, as if you had expressed some intimation of a deep kinship. Aw. I'm waiting too. My class got cancelled this morning, so I guess I'm stuck here until my next one. Oh, will you really have to go? Wither looks anxious all of a sudden, vulnerable, as if your answer would genuinely hurt him. Yeah, eventually. I still have an hour or so, but, I have to leave sometime. He nods, solemnly, lower lip protruding a bit. Oh, I see. I was simply hoping for the chance to take you out. Maybe walk you home? He looks at you, hopefully, and your heart skips a beat in your chest. This was moving so fast. I mean, I should really go to class. Maybe some other... Are you sure? Wither interrupts. The anxiety on his face has deepened, and you frown, trying to make sense of it. Place his strange behavior in context. Are you sure you have to go to class? I mean, didn't you say it had been cancelled earlier? What? It was cancelled this morning. That doesn't mean... That's a notification from your school email. Puzzled, you shoot Wither an apologetic glance before opening your lock screen and pulling up your inbox. It looks like your next class was also out today. Something about the professor having car trouble, though you weren't really sure what a growth in the engine could mean. A growth in the engine? Wither? Are you friends with the trees? Oh, weird. I guess my other course isn't happening after all. Wither looked near giddy at that, which gnawed at you a little. Was it normal for someone to look so excited that you were free? The two of you were essentially strangers. Wonderful. That's sublime news. Would that mean you'd be willing to join me for the day? It's been so dull. I'd love to treat such a bright spot of sunflower to a pleasant afternoon. Like a date? A date, a courtship, a tryst, an engagement, whatever you prefer, I'm asking. So, what'll it be then, my pretty Amaryllis? Someone arrives looking beautiful. He wants to know you. What do you say? I say I saved my game. That's what I say. Yes, sure. Why not? Sure, I'd love to. You've gone quite suddenly from surprised to flummoxed. Flummoxed. I haven't heard that word in years. But something about him was drawing in your interest. Surely it couldn't hurt. It must have been the healthy smell of the ground that he smells like, or his adorable little leaves sticking out of his hair. The rest of your day was suddenly freed up, after all. Wither beamed, placing a hand at the small of your back. Where would you like to go, sweet pea? That soft, earthy smell of his grew deeper as he came close. It was enough to make you feel a little lightheaded, and you appreciated the support of his hand on you, if nothing else. So near to him, you noticed he must have had pretty bad joints. They seemed to creak slightly as he moved, and his knuckles looked bulbous, almost a little swollen. Aww. Well, there's a little flower shop in town you might like, since it seems like you enjoy them. I do. That sounds enchanting. Quite the romantic, apparently. Wither steered you towards the entrance of the library, smoothly reshelving the book you'd been leafing through at your meeting as he left. He took his palm off of you long enough to push open the door, then returned swiftly to your side, linking his arm in the crook of your own. Aww. Campus was in the heart of town, and it was only a few giddy, mystifying minutes in Wither's company before you made it to the quaint little block that housed your favorite flower shop. Normally, you tried to avoid such a densely populated area. There was entirely too much of a chance of running into your classmates to keep you feeling safe from the ever-looming threat of enforced small talk. Gentrification had long since washed everything in a sense of false charm, and there wasn't much sense of meaning of community in most of the newer establishments. Here, though, you are more than happy to make the uncomfortable trek out of your usual circles to marvel at the fresh-cut local flora, arranged daintily in baskets and trailing bouquets. It had been a sorely needed place of respite when you needed to get out of the house, especially now that you hadn't been able to relax in the woods like you used to. Foot traffic had picked up a little, and you had to dodge through groups of chattering students as you pulled up to the block. Wither muttered something under his breath when a particularly distractible-looking girl knocked into you, but the clamor and the noise made it difficult to tell what he had been trying to say. You turned back to apologize by reflex when you heard her make a sharp exclamation and begin to fall behind you, but your date seemed almost oblivious to this, picking up the pace and urging you forward with enough speed that you had to match his stride to avoid falling over yourself. By the time you reached the overflowing displays and Wither had slowed to a stop, you turned around to see if you could catch a glimpse of her, but she had already been swallowed up by the movements of the busy street. Hopefully she was okay. The sidewalk was thick with weeds where you'd heard her fall. I can see what you mean, Daffodil. These are quite exquisite. Startled, you turned your attention back to Wither, marveling over the premature spring blooms in the shop display. They were unusually bright today and in full glorious bloom, completely unlike the usual rumpled, sleepy-looking flowers tended to be this early in the year. Delicate little clusters of snowdrops crowded in among irises, so richly purple they looked somehow faked, lush towers of snapdragons with not so much as a bud out of place, pussy willow branches bound to petticoat camellias and dripping foxgloves. Ooh, I bet all that looks so pretty. I like flowers. Your breath caught in your chest just looking at them, and you clung a little closer to Wither's side, breathing them all in. Exquisite was right. You didn't think you'd ever seen flowers like this here. They looked like something out of a dream. Do you know any good poems about flowers? The words are hushed in your mouth, and you have to make a little conscious effort to look away from the display to face him. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. I feel like I've heard that one somewhere. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. You listened quietly, watching the little flowers bob in a gentle breeze, as if they were illustrating the concept, putting on some small performance just for you. Your chest felt full to bursting as Wither finished out the poem, and you reached out to touch the petal of a plush and feathery soft violet. You know, I found a meadow in the forest nearby, not so long ago with a lot of these veritals. I can probably take you there, if you like. I don't know if I want to follow you into the forest, my friend. I'm starting to fall in love with you, but, that seems like a very Fae thing to do. A meadow? More perfect than a garden could ever dream to be. I think you'd enjoy it. His eyes flick to your mouth before sweeping up to meet your own again. He offers you a saccharine little grin, and you do your best to return it as you turned the thought over in your mind. A spontaneous date was one thing, but following someone who was still more stranger than otherwise into the woods wasn't the picture of safety. Yeah. Is it far off? You let the wary note spread in your voice a bit, uncertain. Not at all. It's barely off the walking path that runs along campus. There was a meadow just out of reach from your near-daily commute, and you hadn't seen it yet? Withers seemed earnest about it, and you'd be awfully close to home if something were to go wrong. As if to clear up any concerns, he spread his hands wide. It's just a minute away from the path. I promise you it's worth it, little blossom. In for a penny, in for a pound, you guess. A little nervously, you nodded, and Wither guided you back to the edge of town, tugging you gently just beyond the tree line. I still wouldn't do it. This is magical AF, but I still wouldn't do it. Watery sunlight cascaded over the leaves, catching them at a brilliant early afternoon glow. Everything was still and breathtaking, and for the first time in you weren't sure how long, you didn't feel that same sense of watchfulness boring into you from between the trees. You walked in nervous, silent for a moment, crumbling leaves breaking apart underfoot. Wither smiled as he pulled you off the trail, and your heart began to hammer in your chest at a breakneck pace.
Oh no. Why'd the music stop?
Anxiety curled in your gut a little tighter with each pace, and by the time you'd lost sight of the path, a lot of your boldness had evaporated. Actually, you tugged back against the hand that held you, jarring your forward momentum. I'm not so sure about this. Maybe we can go back to town? Wither glanced at you, quizzically, tightening his grip around your wrist. There's nothing to worry about, honeysuckle. It's just a little farther. I think You swallowed harshly, stepping back. I really think I'd rather go, actually. That curious expression wilted into a sour grimace, and you yanked your hand fully out of his as you felt the sharp bite of nails pressing into your skin. Ow! Panic brought you to a sudden razor clarity, and you wondered what the heck you'd been doing. You had no idea who this guy was, and you were letting him guide you into the woods just because he batted his eyes at you? How very espoir thing to do. Was he really that charismatic? You fell back against a tree, heaving, and tried to collect all of the strength in your convictions you could muster, willing your words to sound ironclad, non-negotiable. I'm going back to town. Wither stared at you for a few moments, just standing there, motionless as the forest around him. You felt a little sick under his gaze, then, and with an anxious jolt, you realized that the feeling of him peering into you was distinctly inhuman, intense and familiar as the feeling of the eyes you'd been imagining boring through the back of your skull almost every morning. You moved in the direction the path had been, only to cry out when something caught you by the ankle. Oh no! Wither was several feet away, still standing there with a glassy expression. What the heck had caught you? You felt your chin trembling as you slowly looked down, finding your foot encased in a thick shroud of vines. You were sure it hadn't been there just a moment before. What are you? Let me see if I can put this in a way you understand. Do you know what a lichen is?
Lichen.
No, but I can Google it. Mushrooms. Strictly speaking, a lichen isn't an isolated organism. It's a composite of both plant and fungal matter, a mutually beneficial relationship between a photosynthesizer and something akin to both a circulatory system and structural support. He's an incredibly smart mushroom that eats algae. Cool. It isn't even one plant and one fungus. They're composed of a myriad of different fungi, algae, and cyanobacteria. A cumulative experience that is greater than the sum of its parts. I can feel the disparate aspects of myself. I can feel how the mycelium filaments that connect the facets of my being speak to one another, and I can feel the growth that flows from me, takes form as I see fit. And that network speaks to the broader mycelium system that connects the moss, the flowers, the trees, the whole forest. And I have agency there, too. The world is my garden. That is cool. You are cool, Wither. Oh my gosh. Ugh. If you were trying to trap me here, I want to hang out with you. But the whole trapping me here, that's not cool, man. That's a cool concept for a character. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So I suppose you could say that's what I am. What do you want from me? Where's the "oh my gosh, that's so cool, man" button? What do you want with me? To take you home, dear heart. What else? There really is a meadow, if you just be patient. You'll see it's really very lovely. After all, I made it just for you. The trailing vines curled tighter around your calves, drawing your legs tight together and hitching your knees forward in one fell swoop. You wobbled, losing your balance with a gasp. Ouch! Also, aww. Ha! Joke's on you. I like plant boys. I like plant characters. Wither caught you as you fell, laying you out on the mossy forest floor. Oh, that's probably lovely. You see, you're trying to scare me, Wither, but all this sounds absolutely lovely. I'm so happy I have you. You're such a beautiful little flower. I want you to flourish here. Let the world go, sweet Dahlia. I'm here now. It's just going to be the both of us here. Forever. Oh no! It never ends. Okay. I like him. I like Wither. Hee hee hee. Let's do some things slightly differently. Did you need something? No, just killing time. I like the poetry section. Usually it's a little empty around here. I was so excited to see you reading something familiar that I got a little ahead of myself, I suppose. I didn't mean to frighten you. Honestly, I simply never have the privilege to talk to anyone about it. Oh, no worries. You're fine. Geez, you sort of feel bad you don't have more to say on the topic. It was just the first book you picked up, after all. It's not like you asked for his opinion, though. He steps a little closer to you, and a strange, damp earth smell envelops you. It's almost stifling. Do you have a favorite poet? I'm more than happy to make a recommendation to you. I could even recite you something, if you like. What do you say? Something as pretty as you deserves to hear a little bit of lovely. Did you like that poem, Tree Heart? This guy was acting seriously bold, especially considering you were practically alone, and the day hadn't even had a chance to start properly. Who even had the energy to flirt this early? Something about that question was raising the hairs on the back of your neck. It was obvious he meant a little more than just determining your preference of the piece. You look him over a little more critically, really taking your time to feel him out. If he was self-conscious, he didn't show it, gazing back at you with a calm, metered expression, waiting for your answer with the kind of ease that said he had all the time in the world to hear you out, and all the patience to sit through it. Oh, yeah, I guess he's used to sitting and being still. Why don't I try to, blow him off as much as I can? It wasn't for me. Sorry. All of this was much too forward, much too fast, much too early in the morning for you. Maybe Wither was a nice guy, but you weren't interested in hearing more poetry from him right now. Weren't so sure you were interested in him at all. Best to let him down early and easy. I'm really just here to relax a little bit before class. I think I'd rather be alone, if that's okay. Whoa, he looks really crushed. Was he really that interested in you from the few minutes you've been talking with him? You'd barely gotten in a word. Oh, but actually, I really think I ought to get going. There was no way you were looking forward to hanging around awkwardly while Wither was still here. At best, you'd have to watch him sulk and feel bad for shooting him down, which sounded like a real day ruiner. At worst, well, honestly, he was starting to give you the creeps. You'd rather not find out what a worst-case scenario looked like. You wave a stiff little goodbye and hurriedly shove the book back where you found it. See you around. You hoped your clipped tone was enough to let him know that you didn't, in fact, want to see him around, but you didn't want to take your chances. No, wait a minute. This is happening all wrong. He reached out to grab your arm, and you stiffened up immediately at the intrusion. Long, slender fingers, knotted at the joints like gnarled roots, brushed over the crook of your elbow. His skin was smooth and far colder than you were expecting. It had an almost spongy texture to it as it pressed into you, and a sharp jab of fear pierced your chest. It felt confounding, incorrect somehow, inhuman even, as his hand tightened around you with unexpected strength. You can't leave yet, pretty flower. Don't you see? I'm here for you. If you didn't like the poem, I know other ones. Dickinson, maybe. Wild Nights were I with thee. Is that any better? Sweet Hyacinth.
Hyacinth.
I could never pronounce that word. Forgive me. I wanted to charm you better than all of this. Or maybe it's a game you want. I'll throw you a line and you make a dash. Fear of the unknown. Of the way I feel for you. Afraid, perhaps, to feel it back. But Buttercup, that's all part of it. 'Tis this invites, appalls, endows. Flits, glimmers, proves, dissolves. Returns, suggests, convicts, enchants. Then flings in paradise. Your eyes are glowing. That's not suspicious at all. Let go. You try to keep your voice firm, but it wobbles in your throat, and you end up sounding about as afraid as you feel. His grip had grown painfully tight as he'd gone on, and you feel tears begin to beat up in your eyes. There would be no convincing illusion of strength from you. Fear radiated from your every aspect. You were sure, from pallor to the tremble in your bottom lip. Surprisingly, that seemed to do the trick, and his hand recoils at lightning speed, disappearing into the baggy sleeves of his hoodie. He looks chastised, but you're not taking your chances. You're determined to shake this weirdo right now, and you don't feel particularly forgiving this morning. You're going to let him have it. I'm sorry, Fluff. I'm really making such a mess of this. Stay away from me. You're already stepping away, angled towards the door. No chances. Please, dear heart, precious petal, let me try again. You don't care to stick around and find out what he has to say. You make your way to the door at a hurried pace, charging through campus without a backwards glance. Well, it wasn't an ideal place to wait, but bumming around the halls sounded like a better idea than being hit on like that and then having to play nice. What a freak. Restless and agitated, you pull out your phone and start scrolling through the endless deluge of content to keep yourself distracted when... Ba-doop. Oh heck, what is it now? An email notification pops up at the top of your screen, listing your school address as the recipient. You thumb it open, cursing under your breath as you read the subject line. Great, apparently your next class was cancelled for car trouble? Though you're not sure what your professor means by a growth in his engine. This day really could have stood to go better for you. You stuff your phone back in your pocket with a huff. What a waste of a nice morning. The events lay heavy and bitter in the pit of your stomach. It looked like you had the rest of the day yourself, though, some time to collect yourself and cool off, if nothing else. You still felt shaken by your run-in with that creep in the library, though you couldn't put your finger on what bothered you the most about it. It wasn't that he had touched you, though that hadn't been pleasant. You could have gotten over it soon enough. It was more that he hadn't felt natural, that running through his veins and underneath his skin was something foreign, energy you could barely see the edges of and were at a loss completely to explain. He felt like a threat. In any case, you weren't too excited about going out into those woods again. You had had enough of feeling on edge today. You could always go through town to get home instead of taking the path. It took a little longer, and you were more likely to have to suffer through obligatory small talk with a classmate passing by, but you wouldn't have to feel that overwhelming sense of being watched. Then again, you'd have to walk through a popular area to get home, and it wasn't uncommon to see college kids out and about, especially ones with too much time on their hands, as had seemed to be the case. Neither option felt ideal, but there was no point in staying around campus any longer. You just wanted to be home already. Which way you going? Going to save my game, that's where I'm going. Yeah, let's cut through town. Yeah. The path seems a bit dangerous, given what we know. You really, really didn't want to walk through those woods again today. Staying in public felt like the safer option after your interaction this morning anyhow. If you did somehow end up running into Wither, you'd be in a well-lit, populated area. You had a bad feeling about being caught with him alone. That felt well worth the extra 15 minutes it tacked onto your walk home. Maybe you were being a little paranoid about someone who'd ultimately just had a hard time taking no for an answer, but something in your gut didn't trust him. The memory of that strange alien feeling of his cold skin against yours lingered in the back of your mind. It crept over you like some horrible invading force, rooting deep into your nervous system. a blanketing, mossy after-echo that spread through the crook of your elbow to the base of your spine. Wait a minute. Did he put some spores on me or something? Better not. You couldn't feel that way again. You couldn't shake the feeling that the way it swept over you would consume you whole. Well into morning, the local downtown area had picked up traffic by the time you gathered yourself and got up the courage to make your way down. Like any pompous, gentrified college town, kitschy little shops lined the busy streets, from organic grocery stores to minimalist candle boutiques. The appearance of prosperity changed hands and trickled down to nothing. Nothing thrived here but resentment. You'd never felt completely comfortable in densely populated areas. There was too much noise, too much unbearable pressure of being in a way that was palpable enough to warrant taking space. Today, however, the throngs of students, tourists, and busy locals gave you some peace of mind. Every passerby was witness, a quiet observer that, instead of stoking the spark of anxiety in your chest, stood as assuring reminders that there would never be a moment before you reached your block of being truly alone. Despite the sunshine and the bustle, you couldn't shake the crawling, pinprick feel arising from the back of your neck. Less intense than it had been this morning, sure, but behind every turn was the same encompassing certainty that you were being watched. Is it the flowers? Is it the little fleurs? Your breath came fast and shallow, head down and neck on a constant swivel. You tried to moderate your pace. Still the frantic racing of your heart. There wasn't much possibility someone would actually follow you home, was there? A flash of green in your periphery snaps at your attention, and you follow the automatic surge of adrenaline as it pulls your gaze across the busy central square. Ah! No! 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 I'll spray you with water. Wait, no, he'd like that. No! No, 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 no. What was he doing here? There's no mistaking it for coincidence. He was looking right at you. That gaze made the rest of the world seem to fall away, caught you fast and left you feeling sick and immobile. Your thoughts came to a screeching halt, blood thundering in your ears. You wanted to deny what you saw, sever your instinct clean and return to a world where you felt safe again. Under his watchful stare, you realize with a start that you can't quite remember when that was. Had you only met today? This was a familiar fear, broken in and molded around the edges of your life. It fit snugly in your throat. Had it been him watching you from the trees? How long had this stranger been making a home on the margins of your life? How much had he seen you, known you, before he let himself be known today? And what the fluff happened to your classes for both of them to be cancelled when he did? Snapping to your senses, you force your heavy limbs to move. It didn't. Couldn't matter, bone deep. All you knew was that you needed to get away. You tear your eyes away from his and duck behind a gaggle of rowdy students as they make their way across the street, intent on losing yourself in the shuffle. You scramble for options as you dodge corners and make yourself an assuming body in the crowd. Something told you that a visit to the local police station would yield less than fruitful results. Officer, there's a cute plant man hounding me, and he's watching me from the trees, and I think the trees are in on it. What were you supposed to say? Someone on your campus gave you a bad feeling, and you saw them again when you went into town? That's just because you'd been a little on edge. There was reason to believe you were in danger? You were having a hard time even believing yourself about that big of a stretch. What choices did you even have? Your street laid blocks away. Maybe you'd be alone, but at least at home, you'd have familiarity. Walls, lights, a door that locks, a kitchen knife if things got dicey. You're not sure whether or not you felt genuine relief as you reached your door, winded from having broken into a sprint the last block. You hadn't seen Wither since you left him in the square. Somehow, that did little to comfort you as you slammed the door shut behind you with trembling fingers and slid the deadbolt into place. The alarm bells in your head began to fade to a quiet dread as you slump against the door, eyes drifting seemingly at random before they landed on the dirty French press you'd left on the counter in your rush to leave this morning. Hysteria sunk its claws into you, and you heaved out a great, shuddering breath you couldn't pinpoint as closer to a laugh or a sob. When the last remaining shreds of your sympathetic nervous system ground to a quiet halt, you picked yourself up off the floor and tucked the chair neatly under the doorknob, effectively barricading yourself in for the time being. You'd worry about leaving in the morning. For now, you'd rather concentrate on getting yourself through the night. Paranoid and unsure, but no less determined to make it through until morning before some alternative plan could be put in place, you settle down at the kitchen table and fix your eyes on the door. Fluff! What time is it? Too late at night for me to be playing this game. You blink, awake, groggy and stiff-necked from having fallen asleep in your chair, only to be met with confusion when the only thing that greets you is a suffocating expanse of black. Oh no! Apparently, you'd been worn down enough to fall asleep without even remembering to turn the lights on. It had still been pretty light out when you'd constructed your little watch party of one, but whatever daylight you'd had left had long since bled away into night without your noticing its passing. Well, you weren't dead. That was a notable positive from what the intensity of the terror you'd experienced earlier would have led you to believe was the likely course of the evening. Yawning and disoriented, you resolved to make your way to the bedroom and lock the internal door behind you before returning to sleep, more out of a self-loathing overabundance of caution than genuine tactical advantage. You blindly feel your way across the kitchen, skimming your hand along the wall for guidance and support as you attempt to let route muscle memory escort your exhausted body to bed. What was that? The sound of breaking glass echoed from just down the hall. Oh no, is the plant roots coming in my window? Wither, now come on, you're breaking and entering now, pal. Come on, this is a bit much. Also, I'm playing this very late at night. Please don't scare me. The sound of breaking glass echoed from just down the hall. It sounded like it came from the living room. Terror, swift and certain, washed over you in what seemed to be an instant. Exhaustion fell away, and suddenly you felt keenly awake and aware. It was too dark to see what was going on, and you left your phone in the other room. There was very little way you could see yourself finding it without making enough noise to alert an intruder of your whereabouts. You mapped out your floor plan, bile rising in the back of your throat, as anxiety came with the nauseating clarity that without being able to see what was going on, you'd have no way of knowing which direction to defend yourself from, or which direction to run. You were going to have to turn on a light and check it out for yourself. Heart hammering, mouth dry, you made your way to the living room on unsteady feet, feeling for the edge of the light switch, with a silent plea held tight between your teeth. Stop that! Stop it! You stop! That's enough! No more! It's time to stop! Oh, flippity fluffity doodle. Fun time funnel cakes. Fooly cooly. I'm running out of F words here. What the heck was that? Well, you see now, that there is something you ought to run from. There you are, my beautiful begonia. We didn't get to finish our conversation earlier. Frozen in place, you watched as Wither's long, branching limbs warped and appeared to grow, reaching through your living room. Oh boy, that's terrifying right there. That's awful scary. Thick, budding tendrils spilled over the windowsill and began a tangled march across the floor. You felt trapped, held firmly in place by the chemical inability to accept what was happening to you. Yeah, I'd be pretty frozen too. Like, yeah, dude's breaking in your house, but he's a plant man, and it's kind of cool, actually, but get out. Even before those vines knotted around your ankles, leaving you bound and helpless as this monstrous developing thing crept in through your living room window. Pulling himself to his full, frightening height, Wither stood, body a mess of barkish skin and branching pathways. Monstrous, webbed through with mosses and emerging leaves, studded here and there with delicate networks of little pale mushrooms, shelf-like wood ears protruding from the ridges of what looked like ribs. Only that face remained in recognizable form, that darn stare, that felt like every haunted moment you had been alone and afraid recently, paranoia creeping into your mind on little cat feet. His was the prying gaze of someone from whom there could be kept no secrets, which dissected your privacy and your freedom, leaving absolutely nowhere to hide. Don't fret, honeysuckle. I'm here to take you home. I did not agree to this. I do not consent. I do not consent. Okay, so going back and trying a few things that I didn't try, what if I say, no, I don't think so, to his asking for a date? No, no, I don't think so. I'm sorry. Something about this man was rubbing you the wrong way. He seemed entirely too attached, overly sweet in a way that made you wonder what he was hiding. Are you secretly a tree man? Sure, it was nice to be flirted with, but all of this was really starting to be too much. Yeah, that's how the poem went too. He sighs, looking grim and defeated, before setting his jaw firm and looking up to you with what appeared to be a fresh wave of determination. But of course that's what you'd say. It was the poem, wasn't it? Not a silken fan. That's okay. Let me try again. What? No, it wasn't because... He lunges forward, grabbing your arm with surprising strength. Hey! Please, little Lily, wait a minute. This is happening all wrong. I think Lily is my favorite. You can call me Lily. You stiffened as he stepped in closer to you, filling up your space until you were all but breathing him in. Long, slender fingers, knotted at the joints like gnarled roots, brushed over the crook of your elbow. His skin was smooth and far colder than you were expecting. It had an almost spongy texture to it as it pressed onto you, and a sharp jab of fear pierced your chest. Okay, so I just kind of dip, and what if I go through the path anyway? You didn't want to be out of the house for longer than strictly necessary after what you went through today. If that meant getting a little freaked out in the woods, then so be it. Well lit, now in the late morning sunlight, the walking path was mercifully empty by the time you gathered yourself up enough to make your way home. You kept a brisk pace, squinting as you broke through the bright sunshine pools between dappled expanses of shadow. It was warmer than it had been when you left, but you still found yourself shivering a little. With any luck, spring would soon bring the world to a thaw, and you could make it through your commute without such a chill settling over your bones. While it was a quicker route, for which you were grateful, you did find that the unsettling feeling of being watched had not lessened since your walk to campus earlier this morning. You felt that same phantom gaze acutely now, could almost imagine its pathway over your body, feel the way it trailed over you, shudders breaking out across your spine in its wake. You went this way to feel alone, away from prying observation. You hadn't seen anyone behind you at the trailhead, had no reason to suspect you were anything but by yourself. Why couldn't you shake that sense that you were being followed then? It's the trees, it's like that one bad movie, yeah, that one. Unnerved, you wrap your arms around yourself and press on, turning your attention to the familiar winding path. Or, supposed to be familiar. Had the well-kept packed dirt trail always been so narrow? It looked like 2 strides across, or less now, walled in on each side by a thick carpet of leafy underbrush. It was unseasonably lush, life existing here in abundance far earlier than the weather would predict. You pause, taking a moment to gain your bearings. This looked all wrong. You realized with a jolt of sickening dread you couldn't hear any cars close by, signaling that you were no longer close to the main road, and what had always been a perfectly maintained surface now looked broken through with thick roots. Uh-oh. How long had you been walking? The path was so straightforward. How could you have possibly gotten lost at all? You turn on your heel, ready to call it quits and head back through town, only for your next footfall to land squarely in the brush. Thorns caught at your leg, and you swore it felt as though the creeping vines tangled around you with purpose. It took some effort to pull away from them, and you stumbled back into the path in mute, uncomprehending horror. Where the trail behind you had been now lay a dense carpet of foliage. The trees themselves seemed to be swallowing the earth where you had walked just moments before. Nothing but a faint rustle of leaves betrayed any movement from them, but there was no escaping the fact that there was now no way out but forward, and forward was not leading where it should. Closer inspection showed a gentle bend in the path ahead, and you could see the gradual devolution of packed earth to nothing more than a loose, uneven clearing in the forest floor. He's taken me right where he wants me. Where were you? Struggling to get a grip on your racing thoughts, you peered down the trail critically. This part of the forest looked unfamiliar to you, and you couldn't be certain, but you were fairly sure that the path you were on was headed the wrong direction. Continuing that logic, should you follow the path you are currently on, you wouldn't be arriving home at the end of it, if indeed you found the end. Maybe it would take you to a different trailhead, or empty into a street, at which point you could reorient yourself. But you weren't sure exactly how long that was going to take. Would you reach somewhere familiar before dark? It had never seemed so easy to get turned around, but your sense of direction was wavering. Shaky thing in the face of a path that the very earth appeared intent on redirecting. Your other option was to attempt to backtrack, hope that you hadn't wandered too far off course, and try to return to the trailhead near campus. If you reversed the direction of the curve ahead, there was a good chance you could get back to where you started in less than an hour. If you didn't end up back there in that time frame, then you'd rather not consider the consequences of that too soon. Staying put was off the table. You could still feel the phantom itch of being watched, and you had a nagging dread in the pit of your stomach that suggested being caught out here in the dark would have disastrous consequences. Perhaps you too would be enveloped in the heady bed of decomposers and tangled vines, shot through with the first flowers as spring ruled through the wood. Nothing left of you but substrate. Ugh. You knew somehow that it was vital for you to move quickly, and that once you picked a pathway, there would be no opportunity for second-guessing. Oh, please don't make me choose. Backtracking would do nothing but while away daylight. Oh no, I don't want to choose. I don't know what to do. My sense of direction is horrible. Keep moving forward. It's the thing I always say. Keep moving forward. You didn't like the idea of going into the woods blind. It was better to keep moving forward and follow the path that still lay ahead of you. It was bound to lead somewhere. You best believe I'm going to go back and see what that other choice is. As panicked as you felt right now, leaving your only clear indication of direction somewhere instead of only a potential somewhere, felt as close as you could get to throwing yourself to the wolves. Man, you really hoped you weren't going to run into any actual wolves. At least, relieved to have made a definitive decision, you resumed walking, the sound of your breathing almost painfully loud as you began to notice the frightening stillness of the wood around you. It almost looked as though the trees were closing in, knitting the sky above you closed and insulating you within their meshing, web-like structures. Branch became indistinguishable from branch, and taking the appearance of one great entangled being. Oh boy. Don't you spook me, Wither! Don't you spook me in the middle of the night! The terrain grew rougher as the path continued to narrow, thickening plant life rising until it swung above your head. You were completely enclosed now, and began to notice an odd creaking sigh of what you assumed were the plants closing in behind you.
Come on, plants are my favorite, don't make them scary.
The sun was beginning to sink overhead as your legs burnt with exertion. How much longer would this go on? It was beginning to feel as though you'd only occupy a smaller and smaller space, moving stubbornly forward until you were pressed into nothing on all sides. You slowed to a crawl as the path became so tight that you were effectively squeezing through foliage so dense it may as well have been a brick wall. Just ahead, as despair was settling heavy in your chest, you could hear the faintest rustle of leaves. Taste moving air outside the stagnant rot of decomposing plant matter that had perfused your senses. You could sense relief as you came closer to it, felt now that you were in some place more like a funnel about to empty out into a wider space. With one last push, you tumbled out of the forest's suffocating embrace and landed hard on your knees, bruised but breathing. You looked around, finding yourself in a semi-enclosed kind of meadow. Early spring flowers bobbed and waved cheerily, and the ground was swaddled in a quilt of spongy moss around vibrant grasses and little sapling trees. It was quite beautiful, in an untouched and distinctly earthen way. And in the middle of it all, unassuming and nonchalant, he stood there, catching the best of the golden hour in a radiant, deeply unnatural-looking glow.
Oh, hi, friend.
Well, hello there, pretty little poppy.
You? What the heck are you doing here? What did you do?
I brought you home, dear heart. I made this place just for you. Fair flower that dost so calmly grow, hid in this silent, dull retreat, untouched thy honeyed blossom blow, unseen thy little branches greet. No roving foot shall crush thee here, no busy hand provoke a tear. By nature's self in white arrayed, she bade thee shun the vulgar eye, and planted here the guardian shade, and sent soft waters murmuring by. Thus quietly thy summer goes, thy days declining to repose. I do hope it isn't so dull, at least, though nothing could be as lovely as you deserve, my darling honeysuckle, I must admit.
I don't understand. Why are you doing this to me?
How are you doing this? I'm doing this to protect you, sweet pea. It's such a frightening world out there. I can hardly understand how you come from it all. I saw you, and I knew you were made for me, my gorgeous flower, to tend to you, and love you, and prune out any weeds that dared to snuff you out. I've been waiting for the moment to be right. I wanted you to have a sanctuary here, a perfect little secret garden. I grew this all for you. Made sure that I was right as well. I know you're kinda so fussy about how things look. Did I do all right? I'm not half so beautiful as you.
You're fine, sweetheart. You're fine. Your eyes are beautiful. Your hair is lovely. But you know, the whole keeping me here against my will, that's kind of bad. Don't do that.
You fell back as Withers stepped forward, advancing on you. Your back hit the sealed-over tangle of trees fencing you in with this monster. And you fought back a scream as his cold, strangely textured hand came up to rest on your cheek. You realized now that his flesh couldn't have been human at all. Tried to keep the bile in your throat from rising up at the revelation.
What are you?
Trailing vines curled around your calves, drawing your legs tight together and hitching your knees forward in one fell swoop. You wobbled, losing your balance with a gasp. I'm so happy to have you. You're such a beautiful little flower. I want you to flourish here.
Let me go. I can't just live out here like this.
Oh, my dear, you need to let them go. The truthful liars and the false fair friends and the boths and the neithers, you must let them go. They were born to go. Let all go, dear. So comes love. His arms curl around your waist, pulling you flush against his chest and sighing contently. Let the world go, sweet Dahlia. I'm here now. It's just gonna be the both of us here.
Well, you and all your countless mycelium mushrooms.
Forever. Oh
I'm assuming it doesn't end. Now, hold on a second. Hold on a second. I say hold on a second. What if I try to turn around? Dang it! Well, that was Flowers of Evil. My goodness, that was eloquent. That was so beautifully written. Ah, beautiful. Ah. I mean, I do have a weak spot for poetry and flowers, but come on, guy. You're being a bit forceful. You're adorable, but come on now. Weather, come on, please. That was a lot of fun. I like that. That was gorgeous. That was well written. Actually kind of scary. But I will wait patiently for any updates to this game, and I'm very eager to see what in the world's going on here. Wither is adorable, though. I love him. He's a bit forceful.
But thank you so much for hanging out with me. Take care of yourself. Have a good night, and remember, there is always hope.